sayatam vayaditaratascha swavigyasvara. Tene brahma rudaya adikavaye mojanti jasuraya. Tejo varimrida jata vinimayo jatra trisagomrusya. Dhamnasvena sada nirastakuhakam satyang param dhimahi.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute
and the primeval cause of all causes.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
It's the only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
The original living being.
The original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representations.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representation.
Of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
Of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
Only because of him do the material universes.
Only because of him do the material universes.
Temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature.
Temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature.
Appear factual, although they are unreal.
Appear factual, although they are
I therefore
unreal.
meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri
Who is
Krishna.
eternally existent in the transcendental abode.
Who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode.
Which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world.
Which is forever free from the illusory representation of the material world.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
Dharma pujita kaitavocha.
Dharma prujita kaitavoto.
Paramo nirmatsaranam satam.
Paramo nirmatsaranam satam.
Vedyam vastavam atravastu.
Vedyam vastavam astravastu.
Shivadam tapa trayonmulanam.
Shivadam taputrayamulanam.
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite.
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni
Kim va parir ishvaraha.
Kim va parir ishvaraha.
Sadyo hridi avarudyate tra.
Sadyo rudya varudya titra.
Krite bihi sususubhistakshanat.
Kriti bhi shushu subhishtarkyanat.
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are material motivated.
This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth.
This Bhagavad Purana propounds the high truth.
Which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
Which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The highest truth is the reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
Such truth uproots the threefold mysteries.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity.
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity.
Is sufficient in itself for God realization.
Is sufficient in itself for God realization.
What is the need of any other scripture?
What is the need of the other scripture?
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam.
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam.
By this culture of knowledge.
By this culture of
the
knowledge.
Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
The Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Nikama kalpataror galitam phalam.
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam.
Sukhamukad amrita dravya samyatam.
Sukhamukad amrita dravya sangitam.
Pibata Bhagavatam rasam alayam.
Pibata Bhagavatam rasam alayam.
Muhur ahoraska bhuvi bhavakaha.
Muhur ahorasika bhuvi bhavaka.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam.
The mature fruit of the desired tree of Vedic literatures.
The mature fruit of the desired tree of Vedic literatures.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all.
Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all.
Including liberated souls.
Including liberated souls.
Shinvatam Swakata Krishna.
Srimvantam Swakata Krishna.
Punya Shravana Kirtana.
Punya Shravana Kirtana.
Hridyantakstohi Bhadrani.
Hridyantakstohi Bhadrani.
Vidunati Srihitsatam.
Vidunati Suritsatam.
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literature.
or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
Or to hear from it directly from the Bhagavad Gita.
is itself righteous activity.
It is self-righteous
And for
activity.
one who hears about Krishna,
And for one who hears about Krishna,
Lord Krishna is dwelling in everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna is dwelling within everyone's heart,
acts as a best wishing friend,
acts as his best wishing
and
friend,
purifies a devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
and purifies the devotee who's constantly engaged in hearing
Nasta
of him.
presu abhadresu
Nasta prayeshva bhadreshu
nityam bhagavata sevaya
nityang bhagavata seva
bhagavati uttamasloke
bhagavati uttamasloke
bhaktir bhavati naistake.
bhakti bhavati nastiki.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
and from the devotees,
and from the devotees,
he becomes fixed in the transcendental service of the Lord.
he becomes fixed in the transcendental service of the Lord.
He becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
He becomes fixed in devotional service of the Lord.
Tadarajastamo bhava
Tadarajastamo bhava
kamalobhadayaschaye
kamalobhadayaschaye
cheta itar navidam
Chaita itaranabhidam
stitvam sattve prasidati.
sitam sattve prasidati.
By development of devotional service,
By development of devotional service,
one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance,
one becomes freed from the modes of passion of ignorance.
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
And thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
Evam prasana manaso
Evam prasanna manaso
bhagavad bhakti yogataha
Bhagavad Bhakti Yogata
bhagavad tattva vijnanam
Bhagavad Tattva Vijnana
mukta sangasya jayate.
Mukta Sangasya Jayate.
When these impurities are wiped away,
When these impurities are wiped
the
away,
candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness,
the candidates remain steady in the
becomes enlivened by devotional service,
becomes enlivened by devotional service,
and understands the science of God perfectly.
and understands the science of God perfectly.
Vidyate hridaya grantis
Vidyate Hridaya Grantis
chidyante sarvasamsaya
Chidyante Sarva Samshaya
siyante jasya karmani
Chiyante Sacha Karmani
drishta evat manishware.
Drusta Evadmanishwari.
Thus Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection
Thus the Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot to material
and
affection
enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram,
and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samshayam samagramam,
understanding of the supreme absolute truth, personality of Godhead.
understanding the supreme absolute true personality of Godhead.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
can one understand the science of Krishna.
can one understand the science of Krishna.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 18, verse number 37. Iti langita maryadam
Iti langitam maryadam
taksaka saptamehani
takyaka saptame hamani
danksyati sma kulangaram
danksyati sma kulangaram
chodito me tatadrunham.
jodito me tata druham.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. The brāhmana's son cursed the king thus: on the seventh day from today, a snake bird will bite the most wretched one of that dynasty, Mahārāja Parīkṣit, because of his having broken the laws of etiquette by insulting my father. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada. Thus the beginning of the misuse of Brahminical power began, and gradually the Brahmanas in the age of Kali became devoid of both Brahminical powers and culture. The Brahmana boy considered Mahārāja Parīkṣit to be a kulangara, or wretched of the dynasty. But factually, the Brahmana boy himself was so, because only from him did the Brahmana caste become powerless, like the snake whose poisoned teeth are broken. The snake is fearful as long as his poisoned teeth are there. Otherwise, he is fearful only to children. The personality of Kali conquered the Brahmana boy first, and gradually the other castes. Thus, the whole scientific system of the orders of society in this age has assumed the form of a vitiated caste system. Vitiated means powerless and more or less devoid of any potency, which is now being uprooted by another class of men, similarly influenced by the age of Kali. Well, we'll see who he's talking about there. One should see to the root cause of vitiation and not try to condemn the system as it is, without knowledge of its scientific value. Yeah, well, just because there's the false practice of the caste system doesn't mean that the Varnasrama system is bad. It just means that the false practice of it is bad. The Varnasrama system is a scientific way of organizing society so people make gradual and progressive advancement toward pure devotional service and going back to Godhead. So it's not bad. But because of the misunderstanding of how it functions, due to, and beginning with Sringi, the immature son of Samika Rishi, a great brāhmaṇa, and his son was a brāhmaṇa, but he was immature and puffed up by his acquisition of power, of cursing. And he, as we said yesterday and the previous day, his fatal fault was the fact that he didn't ask his father if what he was going to do was right or wrong. He just assumed that he knew what was right and wrong and did it. And thus committed a great blunder and came under the control of Kali. So how does Kali take control? How does Kali develop what you call authority? Well, it's in direct proportion to the weakness of people. When a person gets puffed up with false prestige by acquiring some power or wealth or knowledge, then what happens? Pavritim cha nivritim cha, karya karye baya baye, bandam moksham chaya veti, puthi sa partha satviki. O son of Prita, that understanding by which one knows what ought to be done and what ought not to be done, which is to be feared and what is not to be feared, which is binding and what is liberating, what is binding and what is liberating, is in the mode of goodness. Well, the problem is, explained in 16:7, which says that those who are demoniac do not know what is to be done and what is not to be done. Neither cleanliness to proper behavior nor truth is found in them. So Sringi, by not asking his father's advice and assuming that he knew what's right and wrong, he began the degradation of the entire Brahminical caste and the other three castes also. It's trickle-down deviation. So this is a big problem in society today. And Prabhupada writes in the 16th chapter, verse 17, let me just make sure it's 17, it's in verse 7, sorry. In every civilized human society, there's some set of scriptural rules and regulations which is followed from the beginning, especially among the Aryans, those who adopt the Vedic civilization and who are known as the most advanced civilized peoples. Those who do not follow the scriptural injunctions are supposed to be demons. Therefore, it is stated here that the demons do not know the scriptural rules, nor do they have any inclination to follow them. Most of them do not know them And even if some of them know, they have not the tendency to follow them. We're talking about scriptural rules and regulations. They have no faith, nor are they willing to act in terms of the Vedic injunctions. The demons are not clean, either externally or internally. One should always be careful to keep his body clean by bathing, brushing teeth, shaving, changing clothes, etc. As far as internal cleanliness is concerned, one should always remember the holy names of God and chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The demons neither like nor follow all these rules for external and internal cleanliness. So, this is a problem today because with the advent of Sringi's colossal mistake, the problem of unqualified brahmanas or selfish brahmanas started and has evolved now rather than devolved, and has become a major problem. In fact, the Varaha Purana explains, now we've mentioned this before, but we'll mention it one more time, that Lord Varaha did not kill all the demons. He just killed Hiranyaksha. He didn't kill his brother, Hiranyakashipu, and many others. And so those demons took birth in Kaliyuga as brahmanas, in families of brahmanas. And instead of taking advantage of that to make spiritual advancement, they have created havoc today in India and even around the world. So this is explained in Canto 1, Chapter 18, verse number 47. If the question is raised why the Brahmana community as a whole was made responsible for allowing Kali into the world affairs, the answer is given in the Varaha Purana, that the demons who acted inimically toward the personality of Godhead, but were not killed by the Lord, were allowed to take birth in the families of Brahmanas to take advantage of the age of Kali. The all-merciful Lord gave them a chance to have their births in the families of pious brahmanas so that they could progress towards salvation. But the demons, instead of utilizing the good opportunity, misused the Brahminical culture due to being puffed up by vanity in becoming brahmanas. The typical example is the son of Samika Rishi and all the foolish sons of brahmanas who are warned hereby not to become as foolish as Sringi and be always on guard against demoniac qualities which they had in their previous births. The foolish boy was, of course, excused by the Lord, but others, who may not have a father like Samika Rishi, will be put into great difficulty if they misuse the advantages obtained by birth in a Brahmana family. There it is. And this is what's happening today. Unless we read Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, we won't understand what's going on today. Another interesting point is, one second, let me find it. Yeah, in 1:1844, Prabhupada writes, he says, due to the termination of the monarchical regimes and the plundering of the people's wealth by rogues and thieves, there will be great social disruptions. People will be killed and injured, and animals and women will be stolen. And for all these sins, we shall be responsible. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The word na, we, is very significant in this verse. The sage rightly takes the responsibility of the brahmanas as a community for killing monarchical government. It means a government in which there's a Rajarishi king, a saintly king, and thus giving an opportunity to the so-called Democrats, who are generally plunderers of the wealth of the state subjects. The so-called Democrats capture the administrative machine without assuming responsibility for the prosperous conditions of the citizens. Everyone captures the post for personal gratification, and thus, instead of one king, a number of irresponsible kings grow up to tax the citizens. Or as they say, tax to the max. It is foretold herein that in the absence of good monarchical government, everyone will be the cause of disturbance for others by plundering riches, animals, women, etc. Well, I rest my case, but this is a serious problem, and that's why here he said, in today's purport, he says, thus, the whole scientific system of the orders of society in this age has assumed the form of vitiated caste system, which is now being uprooted by another class of men similarly influenced by the age of Kali. Who is that other class of men who's furthering the degradation of the Varnasrama system? He calls them Democrats. 3-4 verses after this. Anyway, a Democrat means someone who doesn't believe in monarchy as a system of government, but believes that there must be what's called democracy, or as Prabhupada named it, demon crazy. He called democracy demon crazy. Why? Because people who are not qualified at all to vote, who have no understanding what the purpose of life is, they vote in other low-class people as presidents and big politicians, and it's just a downward spiral. It doesn't mean that Republicans are not included in that class of low-class people. No, they're all low-class, all these politicians today. And they all believe in the democratic type of government in which very low-class people are allowed to vote, and when they figure out that they can vote themselves perks, such as, like for example, now, anyway, I'm not going to get into it, but it's explained here 5,000 years ago by Sukadeva Goswami. So it's nothing new. This was all predicted to happen in Kaliyuga. And besides that, there are other very serious problems. Like, for example, in the first canto, 9th chapter, 26th verse. So it says, at Mahārāja Yudhishthira's inquiry, Bhismadev first defined all the classifications of castes and orders of life in terms of the individual's qualifications. Then he systematically, in twofold divisions, described counteraction by detachment and interaction by attachment. Okay, so in other words, Mahārāja Yudhishthira wanted to know what is the duty of a king and what are the principles of various religious duties. So now, Bhismadev is going to explain, first of all, how to distinguish an animal from a human being. And he says, the Varnasrama Dharma is prescribed for the civilized human being just to train him to successfully terminate human life. So when he says civilized human being, he's implying that there are human beings who are not civilized. And he gets into it. He says, self-realization is distinguished from the life of the lower animals engaged in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. Bhismadev advised for all human beings 9 qualifications. 1, not to become angry. 2, not to lie. 3, to equally distribute wealth. Wow, that's a big point. Right? 4, to forgive. 5, to beget children only by one's legitimate wife. 6, to be pure in mind and hygienic in body. 7, not to be inimical toward anyone. 8, to be simple. And 9, to support servants and subordinates. Just imagine if people followed these 9 points. It would be a different world. Instead of Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk having so much money, they don't even know what to do with it, right? They would, like the Vedic kings, like Mahārāja Parīkṣit, like Mahārāja Yudhisthira, like Lord Ramachandra, like Prithu Maharaj, they would distribute such wealth. And so to brāhmanas, and brāhmanas all had a vow of poverty. They would distribute all that wealth that they would receive to the other classes of people. So how many classes are there? There are actually 4 social classes and 4 spiritual classes. So there's actually 8 classes. The brāhmana, kshatriya, vaishya, sudra, the brahmacharya, the grihastha, the vanaprastha, and the sannyas. So this point 3, equally distribute wealth, that was the whole point of the Vedic Varnasrama system. Of course, Sudras are not supposed to have bank accounts. So how did they distribute wealth to the Sudras? They gave them sumptuous food, clothing, place to stay, and free education, and free Medicare. What was the Medicare system? Eat only prasadam with ahimsa milk, butter, ghee, and cheese, and whey, and all the byproducts of milk from cows that are protected right from birth to death. So, of course, all this has changed today. They don't protect the cows, they eat them instead of getting protein from the milk. And even now they don't want to drink milk. The vegans say, oh, milk, no. We should only have, almond milk or soy milk or something like that. See? So everything that's good has become bad, and everything bad has become good. That's how complicated and convoluted this Kaliyuga has become. And so these 9 points: not to become angry, not to lie, to equally distribute wealth, to forgive, to beget children only by one's legitimate wife, to be pure in mind and hygienic in body, not to be inimical toward anyone, to be simple, and to support servants or subordinates. So, Christians also believe in charity. In fact, they're very charitable. Muslims also, they have what's called zakat. That is, once a year they must give a certain portion of whatever money they have to poor people. So this is nothing new, but the Vedic system had it in a very organized way and with specific rules and regulations how to do it. That's explained also in the Bhagavad Gita. However, in this purport, I don't want to read the whole purport, it's very long, but there's another major point that's being made here. The Vaishyas, the members of the mercantile communities, are especially advised to protect the cows. Agriculture and distribution of the foodstuff are the primary duties of the mercantile community, backed by education in Vedic knowledge and trained to give in charity. Wow, it's a big statement. As the Kshatriyas were given charge of the protection of the citizens, Vaishyas were given the charge of the protection of animals. It doesn't say just cows now, it's saying animals. Animals are never meant to be killed. Killing of animals is a symptom of barbarian society. For a human being, agricultural produce, fruits, and milk are sufficient and compatible foodstuffs. The human society should give more attention to animal protection. The productive energy of the laborer is misused when he is occupied by industrial enterprises. Industry of various types cannot produce the essential needs of man, namely rice, wheat, grains, milk, fruits, and vegetables. The production of machines and machine tools increases the artificial living fashion of a class of vested interests and keeps thousands of men in starvation and unrest. This should not be the standard of civilization. The Sudra class is less intelligent and should have no independence. They are meant for rendering sincere service to the three higher sections of the society. The Sudra class can attain all comforts of life simply by rendering service to the higher classes. It is especially enjoined that the Sudra should never bank money. As soon as the Sudras accumulate wealth, it will be misused for sinful activities in wine, women, and gambling. Wine, women, and gambling indicate that the population is degraded to less than Sudra quality. The higher caste should always look after the maintenance of the Sudras, and they should provide them with old and used garments. A Sudra should not leave his master when the master is old and invalid, and the master should keep the servants satisfied in all respects. The Sudras must first of all be satisfied by sumptuous food and clothing before any sacrifice is performed. In this age, so many functions are held by spending millions, but the poor laborer is not sumptuously fed or given charity, clothing, etc. The laborers are thus dissatisfied, and so they make agitation. What kind of agitation? Socialism and communism, or anarchism. We're seeing that today. We've seen it throughout history. The Varnas are, so to speak, classifications of different occupations, and the ashrama dharma is gradual progress on the path of self-realization. So everyone is allowed, brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras are allowed to progress through the ashrama system. Prabhupada showed that's possible. I'm born in a Sudra family, even lower than Sudra, demons, a meat-eating family. But yet, I was given a chance to be in the ashrama system, you see. So this is real Krishna consciousness. This, whatever may seem to be an inequality in the Varna system, although if it's practiced correctly, there's no inequalities. But even if there is some inequality, that inequality is erased by the ashrama system, because everyone is given a chance to progress spiritually and attain the position of sannyas and go beyond sannyas to pure Vaishnava. The conditioned souls under material bond. Now, the question that someone might say, well, what about the women? It doesn't say that they can be in this ashrama system. No, they are also. It's suggested very strongly that every woman should be married and the husband should be qualified, and they live together peacefully. They have children, they raise the children, and the wife goes with the husband into vanaprastha life, where they both give up home and hearth, and then later when the wife gives her permission and the husband feels qualified, he can take sannyas, and the wife lives like a sannyasi also, either under the protection of her children or in a holy place like Vrindavan. So both the women and the men, everybody has a chance to make spiritual progress, including the animals and the plants and the aquatics, as long as they're treated with respect and given prasadam. So everyone can make, every living entity can make progress, the plants, everybody. So the Varnas are, so to speak, classifications of different occupations, and ashrama dharma is gradual progress on the path of self-realization. Both are interrelated, and one is dependent on the other. The main purpose of ashrama dharma is to awaken knowledge and detachment. The brahmacharya ashrama is the training ground for the prospective candidates. In this ashrama, it is instructed that this material world is not actually home of the living being. The conditioned souls under material bondage are prisoners of matter, and therefore self-realization is the ultimate aim of life. The whole system of ashrama dharma is a means to detachment. One who fails to assimilate this spirit of detachment is allowed to enter into family life with the same spirit of detachment. Therefore, one who attains detachment may at once adopt the fourth order, namely renounce, and thus live on charity only, not to accumulate wealth, but just to keep body and soul together for ultimate realization. Household life is for one who is attached, and the vanaprastha, sannyas, and sannyas orders of life are for those who are detached from material life. The brahmacharya ashram is especially meant for training both the attached and detached. So this is a very nice description by Prabhupada. And so we see that what we consider to be success today, someone who's a CEO, some big company employing thousands of people and making so much money, and that is considered success. But actually, success is what we just read. Also, Prabhupada writes in the first canto, 8th chapter, 40th verse, he says, all these cities and villages were flourishing in all respects because the herbs and grains are in abundance. The trees were full of fruits, the rivers were flowing, the hills are full of minerals, and the oceans full of wealth. And this is all due to your glancing over them. So this is Queen Kunti speaking to Krishna. And in the purport, Prabhupada says, human prosperity flourishes by natural gifts and not by gigantic industrial enterprises. The gigantic industrial enterprises are products of a godless civilization, and they cause the destruction of the noble aims of human life. The more we go on increasing such troublesome industries to squeeze out the vital energy of the human being, the more there will be unrest and dissatisfaction of the people in general, although a few only can live lavishly by exploitation. The natural gifts such as grains and vegetables, fruits, rivers, the hills of jewels and minerals, and the seas full of pearls are supplied by the order of the Supreme. And as he desires, material nature produces them in abundance or restricts them at times. The natural law is that the human being may take advantage of these godly gifts by nature and satisfactorily flourish on them without being captivated by the exploitative motive of lording it over material nature. The more we attempt to exploit material nature according to our whims of enjoyment, the more we shall become entrapped by the reaction of such exploitative attempts. So this is a law of nature, right? In fact, tomorrow I'm going to speak at length about the laws of nature. People don't realize what the laws of nature are. They think that there's no laws in nature, although the scientists claim, and rightfully so, that nature is functioning under systematic and perpetual laws. Of course, how do those laws become established? See, there would not be science. There would not be any science or experimentation and science unless nature is functioning in a coherent way under laws. You see, if everything is chaotic, there's no science. You can't predict anything. But because everything is not chaotic, it's organized and it's functioning by laws, therefore there is science. You see, but they don't understand all the laws. What I just read was a law. If you engage in exploitative activities, trying to lord it over nature, trying to control nature, then you're going to get serious reactions. See? So if we have, Prabhupada says, The more we attempt to exploit material nature according to our whims of enjoyment, the more we shall become entrapped by the reaction of such exploitative attempts. If we have sufficient grains, fruits, vegetables, and herbs, then what is the necessity of running a slaughterhouse and killing poor animals? A man need not kill an animal if he has sufficient grains and vegetables to eat. The flow of river waters fertilizes the fields, just like now. The rivers are flooding, right? Well, what happens when they flood? They fertilize. They put the silt and the minerals coming down from the mountains onto the farmland by flooding. And if you go around, you'll see a lot of land is flooded right now. Right? That's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. Of course, they try and stop that with dams and dikes and this thing and that thing, embankments and all that. But actually, the flooding is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. The flow of river waters fertilizes the fields, and there is more than what we need. Minerals are produced in the hills and the jewels in the ocean. If the human civilization has sufficient grains, minerals, jewels, water, milk, etc., then why should it hanker after terrible industrial enterprises at the cost of the labor of some unfortunate men? Yeah, hey, you're lucky not born in Appalachia, and you're born into a coal mining family, and you spend and the adult males and some females, they spend sometimes 10 hours in these deep mines that are black, and they come out black with soot, and they've been inhaling gases that are underground and unclean air, and that soot goes into their lungs, and they don't live very long. They might live to be 40, 45, 50, sometimes 60 years old, and they die. And their whole life is spent in the caves, you know. So, and that's just one. How about the people working in steel mines, steel factories, or people working in? If you go to in India, between Delhi and Vrindavan, there is, what's the name of that place? It's full of factories. What's the name of that place? It's between Delhi and Vrindavan.
Yeah.
No. Well, Noida's new.
It's ended by bad or something.
Huh?
The end's the name.
Anyway, it's full of factories, these huge factories, and every morning you see thousands of people walking into those factories. This is in India. It's not only there, but in other parts of India also, right? Now, all those people 100 years, 150 years ago were living on farms, growing their own food, and not living in high-rises, and they had cows, and they were self-sufficient. Look what's happened to India. It's unbelievable. Faridabad.
Yeah, Faridabad, yes.
Right. Faridabad, horrible place. It's all industry. There's smoke all over the place. And it's, of course, there's a lot of Muslims there also. You know, and they're all working in these gigantic factories. And I'm sure it's in other places in India too. It's all over the place. So, Prabhupada says, what we need, therefore, is to be obedient to the laws of the Lord. First, we have to know what those laws are, and achieve the perfection of human life by devotional service. The indications by Kunti Devi are just to the point. She desires that God's mercy be bestowed upon them so that natural prosperity be maintained by His grace. Natural prosperity. You don't need factories. You don't need big industries. Right? Natural prosperity. So this is a different way of life. This is a different culture. And we've gone very far away from it. And what is the result? You have people burning, killing, you have wars, you have riots, you have people blowing up, big, like this one guy killed, I don't know, he wounded hundreds of people and killed, I think, 50 to 80 people in Las Vegas 3-4 years ago, right? And to do that, he took these big, powerful machine guns into this high-rise hotel casino. And how did he get them in there without anyone noticing it? Well, he did it. And where did he get those? Those are army military weapons. How did he get them? And the bullets, those bullets are like big, powerful bullets, right? And he knew how to aim them from the window of his hotel room. And he did it for hours before they were able to stop him. He's a very clever guy. One person killed and wounded so many people. You see? So why did he get so angry to do something? And you have to have a lot of knowledge to be able to do it and experience, right? And he had to plan it, and it was expensive. There's a lot of hatred, you see? And it's happening all over the United States, happening in other countries also. And there are a lot of dissatisfied people because there's not equal distribution of wealth. There's massive accumulation of wealth by a small number of people. It's called the 1% in the United States. 1% of the people own up to 70% of the wealth of the country. That's a formula. That's why the Soviet Union. That's why the Tsar of Russia collapsed. That whole Tsarist monarchy collapsed because there are so many poor people and very few wealthy people, and eventually the communists were able to convince the poor people, who are the massive people, to revolt. They didn't get everybody revolting, but they got enough people to overthrow the Tsar and establish a communistic state. Okay, so this all started with Sringi, and it was trickle-down degradation from the Brahminical caste right down to creating a whole society of low-class people. Okay, I'll stop right there. Are there any questions?
So Maharaj, it's good to analyze all this, the whole situation. So, for us, Krishna consciousness, what should we do? What's the solution for the world?
It's Harinam Sankirtan.
Okay.
Is there any other solution? Prabhupada's emphasizing that all the time. Massive distribution of prasadam and massive distribution of holy name and also knowledge, books, culture, Vedic culture. Establish, also he said, you have to reestablish the Varnasrama system. He said, near the end of Prabhupada's pastimes, he said, I've only done half the 50%. The other 50% is Varnasrama. Not necessarily for the devotees, but for the mass of people, because it's a scientific way of elevating people progressively to become in the mode of goodness, and then eventually to embrace completely Brahminical culture, real Brahminical culture, and then become Vaishnavas, pure devotees. Yeah.
So really, Harinam seems to be the only solution, really.
Yeah.
To chant Harinam everywhere, as far
Without prasadam,
of course,
without
yeah,
books.
Yeah. Because that can reach quite significant, number of people.
Why don't you talk about the guy who came up to you crying?
Yeah, the guy was in tears, really.
Because you were doing Sankirtan, you were chanting, right?
Yeah, Krishna.
And you were sitting in the truck chanting with the door open, and you had other people chanting with you, and they were distributing prasadam to the people.
And books.
And books, right? And what happens?
And he got everything. He got the Bhagavad Gita, he got prasadam, and then he chanted holy name too.
And he was crying. Why was he
Yeah.
crying?
He was in a mess. He's just, I think he was overwhelmed by. He didn't describe to me really what was his situation, but all I can say, it was suffering, somehow or other.
Yeah.
He was in pain, not physical pain, but he was just disturbed, like the symptoms of people of Kaliyuga, above all disturbed, I should have asked him actually what was his problem.
Well, you'll see him again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I assume, because I have a little time, I didn't want to stop, for a long time, I just assumed that he's suffering, whatever. The way he's suffering is the material world suffering. That's why I told him that this world is a miserable place, so you have to find an alternative.
Yeah. Well, here's the one alternative: chant, dance, and feast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I told him to chant. When I told him to chant, it was like a baby. When I said, do this, immediately he does,
Well, because he recognizes that you're a good person, that you can help him.
I think he has a faith because he came, asked for help. Right. Please help me.
You didn't tell him to go away.
It was really very interesting because he said, please help me. Oh, I feel now, where am I? Okay. I said, look,
Yeah.
I explained to him a little bit of philosophy, and then really he was very receptive.
Mm. So that's what Sankirtan is all about.
Mm.
Helping the most destitute, the people who are hit bottom completely, and they're begging for help. And they recognize that you're a person who can actually help them. That's the big thing.
Actually, he first went to where the windows where the people get
The food.
Food. So Mukunda Prabhu was there, and he was busy, obviously. He said, oh, there's someone there who can help you.
Right.
And he sent him to me. And
You're the doctor.
Actually, I was at that time, but not me, on behalf of.
Well, but you have the
Prabhupada.
medicine. You have the
Yeah,
medicine. Yeah, Harinam Sankirtan, Prasadam, dancing, chanting ecstatically. You saw that you were happy, see? And he was sad. So therefore you go to a happy person to get help, to become happy.
And I told him, repeat. Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Chant the whole mantra.
No, because he had hit bottom. He had hit the
Yeah.
bottom. He's ready for
Yeah.
anything that can help him.
He was out of it. He was just out of
Yeah.
it.
But you have to be there to help the people that have hit the bottom. If you're living in a big palace and have a big fence and dogs and guards and things, those people can't come to you.
Tomorrow is true. What I've learned actually, many people out there is suffering. We need to go there. In fact, we have an Easter Gosti once in Nairobi with Bhakti Charu Maharaj. The devotee was saying that, well, we distributing, invitations for the temple. Hardly people come to the temple. And Maharaj raised a good point. He said that, well, everywhere is the temple.
What?
Maharaj said
Everywhere
that
is the temple.
Yeah. He said, if you people can come here, you can go to them. Like, that means to go on Sankirtan in the street, in public place.
So I got something interesting to tell you. I got a phone call yesterday
Jai.
from a woman in Bellingham. And she told me that she had heard about our food truck. And she said that there are a whole bunch of people in Bellingham that are homeless. And
Wow.
Bellingham's a small place, right? She said there's 700 to 800 homeless people in Bellingham. And she said that she went to our webpage, Northwest Share, and she was very impressed by it. And
Wow.
she wanted to know if, and she said, this is not like a hippie lady, right? She's an older lady, and she said that, she has a group of people that would be willing to volunteer and help us, and that they can even help us financially, she said.
Wow.
if we would come up there. And I told her, yeah, we can do it. So I have a meeting with her Friday. And then she said another thing, because I kept telling her all the different things we were doing. And she said, I should arrange a meeting with the mayor of Bellingham with you.
Wow.
I said, well, okay, So first she wants to meet me, so, and with her friends. And we also found out something. Immediately I called Radhika Gopinath and I said, there's an opportunity in Bellingham. I mean, our truck can't go up there because we're not going to drive the big truck there. I said, but if you can find a commercial kitchen that we can rent, then we could do something there. So he found one, $25 an hour. That's really cheap, right?
Yeah.
And then I told this lady, I said, for us to get, we're going to get a second food truck, but, these trucks are expensive. And I said, maybe we could get a smaller food truck, less expensive one. But I said, but I think what we should do, rather, is I'm sure there might be some restaurants that have gone out of business in Bellingham. Why don't you look around? If you can find a legal restaurant with a legal kitchen that we can rent for let's say $1,200 a month, we'll do it. She said, really? She said, well, we can help you financially also. I said, okay, that's fine. I said, that would be a way we could start right away. And how are we going to start? We go up there and train them. I can train them how to cook and everything, and go out and distribute. Of course, the only question is, but there are some devotees there also, so I could get some of the devotees there, one of them to go and offer the food, and then they'll distribute it. They'll do everything.
I'd love to do that.
And we can go up there. I'm willing to go up there once a week to get it started, and I also told her we're looking for a farm in Whatcom County. She said, what? A farm? I said, that's been our dream for a long time. So, you see, there's a lot happening now. And the situation is getting worse. Economic situation is getting worse. It's not going to get better, and COVID is not going to get better. So there's a huge need for Harinam, Sankirtan, Prasadam distribution, and also all kinds of para upakar, doing good to others. We have to, people should see us as givers, not takers. And we should be willing to invest in this, invest in giving, and not only to our own devotees, but to the whole public. So I think we're going to expand a lot this year, a lot in many different ways. Yeah. Okay, so we'll stop right there. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
So Harinam Sankirtan, the hope
Yes, the only
for
hope.
this suffering humanity.
A lot of people suffering out